Good evening, everybody. So, yes, it's just me here today. It's just me because Lynx is not feeling very good. Yeah, she was debating as to whether to come on the show, and she was deliberating, and she sort of left at the last minute to sort of decide because she really wanted to still come on the show, but yeah, she's just not feeling very good today. So, but yeah, it is a Sunday, and we had, or I had some stories recorded, and I have an idea of one that I might venture to read live. We shall see. So yeah, I am here. See, I got two stories for you today. Hello, Iron Maiden. Thank you very much. I agree for the diamond, which is lovely. Whatever. I love Sunday evenings now. Yeah, I actually do enjoy my Sunday evenings now instead of just dreading Monday. I know for a lot of people, Sunday evening can be a bit of a meh evening with nothing much to do on it. Had a bit too much food, and you gotta get up tomorrow morning. But it is now good day, because it is story day. Yes. So yeah. Yeah, just got two, possibly three stories for you tonight. One of them is regarding they're both regarding famous forests in England, and one of them is actually more of a poem. So, two of our most famous forests in England, the New Forest and Sherwood. Ah, it's noon for you. Yeah, lots of different time zones, isn't it? I suppose there are American pals, or people in many other time zones. Yeah, you're still in the middle of Sunday. You're not thinking about Monday yet. It's fine. Pretend Monday's not happening. Nice. Yes, good afternoon to the US. So yeah, I think without further ado, I think we should have a story. And this one is about a very troublesome dragon. The Biston Dragon. Once, long ago, the village of Biston was greatly troubled by the presence of a dragon. The dragon had his den at Burley Beacon, just on the south-westerly edge of the New Forest. From the heights of the beacon it would swoop down and terrorize the inhabitants of the Avon Valley. However, the dragon particularly liked to bother Biston, especially Lower Biston Farm. In desperation the villagers offered what they could to appease the dragon, and every day they left out buckets of milk for the beast. Rather surprisingly, this worked, although one wouldn't assume that milk would be a dragon's beverage of choice. The creature seemed contented. Even this took a heavy toll on the villagers, for they were forced to give the dragon nearly all of their milk, leaving none for themselves and their young children. However, the dragon was greedy, and thought that if their cows grazed well and the milk was good, why should it not try the meat? It had not tasted blood in a long while, and the cattle in the fields were such easy prey. The dragon's terrible rampage wreaked havoc from Crow to Winkton. The inhabitants of the valley were at their wits' end, and Lower Biston Farm was on its knees, and so they appealed for help from the Lord of Biston Manor, Sir Maurice de Berkeley. Sir Maurice was known as a man of great strength and courage, and he saw that it was his duty to the inhabitants of Biston to rid them of this menace. Sir Maurice had 2 equally brave and faithful hounds. These he took with him to fight the beast. He advised the villagers to leave out their offering of milk as usual, and he would lie in wait, and surprise the monster whilst it was preoccupied with its treat. Sir Maurice covered his armour in birdlime. Birdlime is a very sticky substance, which is made from holly bark, and there is fortunately an abundance of holly trees in the New Forest, and sprinkled the birdlime with broken glass. Then he lay in wait with his 2 dogs. As the dragon swooped down and began to lap up its milk, like a cat, except giant, scaly, and on top of the claws and the biting, also liable to burn one to a crisp, Maurice's hounds ran straight for the dragon, whilst he tried to get to its other side, so they had it surrounded. Maurice always brought his dogs to fight such creatures, for he had known them to tear down the strongest of raging animals. Combined with his own skill and the element of surprise, he had thought that they might have the upper hand on the dragon, even though he was not so foolish as to think it would be a terribly easy fight. But the dragon was stronger than anything he had ever encountered. Sir Maurice watched in horror as his beloved pets were torn limb from limb and tossed aside, at which point the dragon turned to focus its attentions on him. What motivated Sir Maurice to strive so in this fight, none can say. Perhaps it was the anger and grief of losing his 2 trusted companions, a desire to avenge, his sense of duty to the people of Biston. However, whilst the terrified New Forest population cowered in their barns, Sir Maurice fought with the dragon for hours upon hours. When it would try to grab hold of him or coil around him, the shards of broken glass would tear at its scales, and the valley would echo with its screeches of agony. He fought it with the sword, with his glass-covered hands, with his yew-wood bow, wearing it down. The battle raged, until finally, outside of Lyndhurst, the knight was finally able to strike the final blow to the exhausted dragon. He brought down his sword and chopped off its head. The dragon's foul-smelling green blood burnt into the soil. Sir Maurice staggered away from the field a broken man. Some speculate that the noxious fumes of the dragon's blood were poisonous. Others merely say that Sir Maurice had sustained injuries too great to heal. Others blame the trauma of doing battle with such a beast. But 30 days and 30 nights later, the delirious Sir Maurice arose from his bed, stumbled through the forest back to where the dragon lay, by Lyndhurst, clambered on top of the gigantic corpse, and died. The place where the dragon fell became a hill, now known as Bolton's Bench, and Sir Maurice must have had his yew-wood bow, for next to the spot where he died, there sprouted a yew tree, which can still be seen there today. So yeah, that was the legend of the Biston Dragon. Now, all of those places to which it refers are still associated with the legend today. So just a bit about the New Forest for anyone who doesn't know, because I know we have a lot of US viewers. That's one of the largest remaining tracts of completely unenclosed pastureland and heathland and forest in southern England, and it would cover southwest Hampshire and southeast Wiltshire, so it's in the south end of the country. And it's been around, it's been classified as its own official forest since William the Conqueror in the Domesday Book, which was a huge big census that he took of everything. And the landmarks associated with this story, the alleged scene of the fight in Biston is still called Dragon Fields. And over Biston Manor, in a carving of the Berkeley and Bettershorn arms, because this Sir Maurice de Berkeley is a real figure as well, even if he possibly didn't really fight a dragon. There's a beacon and a dragon. And Bolton's Bench at Lyndhurst is supposedly the hill that the dragon's body became, and it still has yew trees growing atop it, and it's there's the main symbol of the village, and you get a lot of inns around there actually. At Biston, that closed in 1873, but it was called the Green Dragon. There's a Green Dragon Inn at Brook, about 11 miles northeast, and there's a Green Dragon Inn at Alderbury. So that's really is, you can see like the signs of that legend still in the local naming, which I think is really interesting in that region. Yeah, we are super saturated in history in Europe. Like, yeah. And it is cool to visit those places and be like, that was in a story, that's my favorite story. There's like stories about York and London and stuff like that. It's pretty cool to go around those cities and see all the stories associated with them, but we have a lot of local legends like this. But in the UK, I'm sure in the rest of Europe as well, although I don't know as much about that. But yeah, so interesting thing about this story, there was a Sir Maurice de Berkeley. And actually, there's a pedigree roll written prior to 1618, preserved at Berkeley Castle, which is nearby Biston, and it names the Dragon Slayer as Sir Maurice Berkeley, Lord of the Manor of Biston, in the 15th century. So, Sir Maurice Berkeley, son of Sir John Berkeley of Beverston, being a great man of great strength and courage. In his time, there was bred in Hampshire near Biston a devouring dragon, who, doing much mischief upon men and cattle, could not be destroyed, but spoiled many in attempting it, making his den near unto a beacon. This Sir Maurice Berkeley armed himself, and encountered with it at length, overcame and killed it, but died himself soon after. This is the common saying even to this day in those parts of Hampshire, and the better to approve the same his children and posterity. Even to this present do bear for their crest a dragon standing before a burning beacon, which seemeth the rather more credible, because Sir Maurice Berkeley did bear the mitre with his authentic seal of his arms, as is here underneath, one of his own deeds expressed, bearing date ye 10 of Henry VI, Anno Domini 1431. So they've actually put that legend in a historical record about this dude. So it's officially in the records. This dude slayed a dragon. Well, yeah, I'm really glad that we can actually connect US people to the European folk stories because, like say, it's Europeans. We're all Europeans, and there would indeed be a lot of Anglo and German in the US, and Scottish and Irish. So yeah, we're really glad that we can connect US people and Canadians to the stories from the old continent, and also, like, we actually do sometimes look at stories from the US. We looked at a couple, we looked at one from Canada as well, because they are a different branch of Europeans who just went somewhere else. So it's really cool. But yeah, like this Maurice de Barclay character, he actually did play some real and significant roles in history. He was actually involved in a rebellion against King Edward II. And he used to be in charge of Berwick upon Tweed from 1314, but he lost it to the Scots under the 1318 capture of Berwick, because there was wars between England and Scotland from about 1295 to 1318. There's been a lot of fights between England and Scotland. But yeah. Interestingly, there is another local legend about the New Forest. Now, it's not really got as much substance to it as this one, but it's worth a mention, and that's the Rufus Stone. So that was a legend associated with royalty. The ironclad stone marks the alleged spot where King William II was fatally wounded with an arrow during a hunting outing in the royal forest in the year 1100 AD. Now, he was nicknamed Rufus because he had a very red, ruddy complexion, and he had red hair, and he was, of course, the son of William I, who was responsible for creating the area known as New Forest. Now, nobody liked William Rufus. He was an absolute cad, showed absolutely no mercy to the local inhabitants of the forest. He was a very unpopular monarch, and just nobody liked him. He was known for having all sorts of vices and sexual perversions, and he was a nasty, horrible man. So he's out hunting deer and wild boar in the New Forest, and the story goes that an arrow was shot, supposedly at a stag, by the Frenchman Sir Walter Tyrrell, who was the king's best archer. But the arrow actually struck an oak tree, and it ricocheted off straight into the chest of the king, which punctured his lung and killed him. So Sir Walter then absolutely hotfoots it back to Normandy, because they're all Normans in this time period, obviously. And he's in fear of being charged with the king's murder. And the tale says he stopped a blacksmith on the way and had his horse reshod with backwards-facing horseshoes, so he could confuse the people who were chasing him. Which is quite clever, but not sure you can actually shoe a horse backwards. Not sure that works. But as it happened, nobody was chasing him because they weren't bothered. He, like I say, very unpopular king. There wasn't actually really an effort to recover his body, apparently. There was just a local charcoal burner called Purkis. He loaded the corpse onto his cart and carried it to Winchester Cathedral, and they had a really low-key burial funeral. And it was it was about 3 days before his brother Henry became the new king. And now there's a bit of a debate over whether the death was actually an accident or whether Sir Walter ever even intended to shoot at a deer. maybe he was just out to assassinate William Rufus. Because there are theories knocking around about Norman political ambition and the general desire to see a bit of an embarrassing king removed from the throne, which is another legend associated. Oh, my grandfather was raised in California, and the first time he visited England he told me it felt like coming home. That's really nice. That's really cool. Because, yeah, I can imagine going back to the place where your genetic stock is from really does feel kinda cool. Oh yeah, absolutely, loads of highwaymen in the New Forest back in the day. Should probably do highwaymen as a theme sometime. Lots of stories about highwaymen. But then we're covering Robin Hood this episode. I mean, the Americans have lots of outlaws, cowboys, that kind of thing. What's YouTube up to? Oh, hi Jill Citizen! Hey. And Ragnar. Hi Rory. Nice to see you here. Yeah, I'm just keeping track of all the chats and stuff. So yeah. Well, let's have another story. Well, less of a story this time and more of a poem. A poem about Sherwood Forest. Sherwood by Alfred Noyes. Sherwood in the twilight, is Robin Hood awake? Grey and ghostly shadows are gliding through the brake. Shadows of the dappled deer, dreaming of the morn, dreaming of a shadowy man that winds a shadowy horn. Robin Hood is here again, all his merry thieves. Hear a ghostly bugle note, shivering through the leaves, calling as he used to call, faint and far away, in Sherwood, about the break of day. Merry, merry England has kissed the lips of June. All the wings of fairyland were here beneath the moon, like a flight of rose leaves, fluttering in a mist of opal and ruby and pearl and amethyst. Merry, merry England is waking as of old, with eyes of blither hazel and hair of brighter gold, for Robin Hood is here again, beneath the bursting spray. In Sherwood, about the break of day. Love is in the greenwood, building him a house of wild rose and hawthorn and honeysuckle boughs. Love is in the greenwood, dawn is in the skies, and Marian is waiting with a glory in her eyes. Hark, the dazzled Laverock climbs the golden steep. Marian is waiting. Is Robin Hood asleep? Round the fairy grass rings frolic elf and fay, in Sherwood, about the break of day. Oberon, rake away the gold, rake away the red leaves, roll away the mould, rake away the gold leaves, roll away the red, and wake Will Scarlet from his leafy forest bed. Friar Tuck and Little John are riding down together, with quarterstaff and drinking can and grey goose feather. The dead are coming back again, the years are rolled away. In Sherwood, about the break of day. Softly over Sherwood the south wind blows, all the heart of England, his in every rose. hears across the greenwood the sunny whisper leap, Sherwood in the red dawn. Is Robin Hood asleep? Hark, the voice of England wakes him as of old, and shattering the silence with a cry of brighter gold, bugles in the greenwood echo from the steep. Sherwood in the red dawn, is Robin Hood asleep? Where the deer are gliding down the shadowy glen, all across the glades of fern he calls his merry men, doublets of the Lincoln green, dancing through the May, in Sherwood, about the break of day. Calls them and they answer, from aisles of oak and ash, rings the follow, follow, and the boughs begin to crash. The ferns begin to flutter, and the flowers begin to fly, and through the crimson dawning the robber band goes by. Robin, 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 and all his merry thieves answer as the bugle note shivers through the leaves, calling as he used to call, faint and far away, in Sherwood, about the break of day. So yeah, that was a poem by Alfred Noyes about Sherwood, and he wrote that in sort of the 20th century. I remember the exact date actually escapes me right now. But I thought it seemed quite relevant today. I definitely thought that it seemed quite like it suited the mood of the times. Or it was optimistic given the mood of the times. I think we could do with the return of a hero of old, like Robin Hood. And it was interesting to me because he sounded in that one like a bit like King Arthur almost, like he was coming back. Seemed like he almost blurred into that sort of a figure. A figure who will come back when needed. My grandfather fought next to the Sherwood Foresters on the first day of the Somme in 1916. Wow. That is certainly quite a bit of I don't know if any of my relatives fought in the Somme. It's a bit of family history to be proud of, but yeah. It's sort of equal parts. You have pride in it, and at the same time it was such a tragic battle. And I'm sure, you know, the entire country appreciates the service of people like your granddad. Will this stream be kept as I've come to this stream late? Yeah, they do stay on YouTube. They always stay. We do have the recording set up for them. This is the stream as was set up originally by Links. So yes, this one will be on YouTube. It's also always going to be on the DLive replay. Gets backed up onto our library as well, which I should link for anyone who wants to watch it on there. The story of Carrickfergus Castle is fascinating when Scotland invaded Ireland. I haven't heard of that one, Ragnar, but I should look into that. But yeah. So, with regards to this story, I guess I ought to explain what some things maybe mean. Just a note that the reference to Oberon, he is king of the fairies in a lot of medieval and Renaissance literature. He's probably best known as being in William Shakespeare's play A Midsummer Night's Dream. And Laverock is a lark, is especially a skylark. So, yeah. Regarding Robin Hood, I guess in the 19th century, a lot of people got curious as to Robin Hood and who he actually was after he appeared in Sir Walter Scott's novel, Ivanhoe, in 1820. And that takes place in England during the Crusades. And one of the featured characters is Locksley, who is revealed to be Robin Hood, King of Outlaws and Prince of Goodfellows. And so Scott really starts portraying him as a very honourable Englishman, loyal to the absent King Richard. And that's a popular characterisation, renewed in modern interest. And the figure of Robin Hood and the question as to whether or not he was actually a real person. So, yeah. And also, it mentioned in there actually Will Scarlet. Just to clarify, that is actually one of Robin's men, but we shall get on to him. So, yeah, there was a historian and archivist called Joseph Hunter, and he discovered that there were a lot of different Robin Hoods dotted throughout the history of medieval England. Often they had a lot of various spellings. So one of the oldest references that's been found, apparently, is 1226 in a court register from Yorkshire, England. So it cites the expropriation of the property of one Robin Hood, described as a fugitive. And then in 1262, in southern England, there's a mention of someone called William Robehood in Berkshire. So there's William, son of Robert Lefevre, or however you pronounce this French name, member of a band of outlaws, believed to be the same person. And also, in 1354 in Northamptonshire, there's a record of an imprisoned man named Robin Hood who was awaiting trial. And there was this guy Hunter, and other 19th century historians, and they discovered a lot of different records attached to the name Robin Hood. So most of them have come to the conclusion that there probably wasn't a single person in the historical record who inspired the stories. Robin Hood seems to have been a typical alias used by outlaws in various periods and locations across England. Wow. Your great-grandfather joined the UVF when he was only 14 right now. Wow, one of 57. That really is something. One of 57 survivors from the Somme. Just reading the YouTube comments there. But yeah. So yeah, there is some. So there's sort of a conclusion that Robin Hood wasn't actually a person. But he is an idea, and you can't kill an idea. So people really ran with it. And there's really the first known mention of him seems to be in the second part of the 14th century, in the Vision of Piers Plowman, shortly before Chaucer even wrote the Canterbury Tales, and that was written by William Langland. And Langland sort of has a poorly educated parson narrating the whole thing. And he says, I cannot perfectly my paternoster, as the priest it singeth, but I can rhymes of Robin Hood. So that's, although I can't recite the Lord's Prayer, I do know the rhymes of Robin Hood. So he's put Robin Hood in a really uneducated character's dialogue to illustrate that, this is just a very common legend. And then in the 15th century, you really get Robin Hood starting to take on his trappings of rebellion against the ruling class. And then you get one of his oldest ballads, Robin Hood and the Monk. And then he spreads out across England in more ballads like The Guest of Robin Hood. And that's one of the first iterations of Robin Hood's edict of stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. And so it specifically says, if he be a poor man, of my good he shall have some. And it's generally considered that Robin is a yeoman, which is a slightly higher status than a peasant, but lower status than a knight, so maybe you've got your own land, or something like that. But you're not nobility. Little John is reputed to be buried in a churchyard in the village of Haffasaga, Derbyshire, and a modern tombstone marks the supposed location of his grave, which lies under an old yew tree. Interesting fact, Rory. Very interesting fact. But yeah, so we have, of course, then through the ages, the rivalry between Robin Hood and Guy of Gisborne emerging, which in some versions apparently he very much, when he kills Guy of Gisborne, he very much enjoys that. He's in some tales he actually is quite savage towards his worst enemy, but I suppose he put into a lot of different trouble, and you might well be. Now, just to go back to the merry man who was mentioned in the tale, one of his gang. Now, Will Scarlet, probably he appears in one of the oldest surviving Robin Hood ballads, A Guest of Robin Hood, and he helps capture Richard at the Lee. So he helps capture Richard, and when Robin lends a knight money to pay off his debts, Scarlet sort of helps him there. He seems to cause trouble quite a bit, though. He seems to have ignited conflicts with Little John, and he seems to be making stuff difficult for Robin in bargains. He seems quite troublesome. And he's generally said to have met Robin Hood when Robin Hood comes across a finely dressed young man shooting deer in Sherwood and offers to let him join the band. And they quarrel and fight, and Robin asks who he is, and he says he is young Gamwell, who killed his father's steward and fled his father's estate to seek out his uncle. So, yeah, he's on the run. And Robin makes him welcome and renames him Scarlet. So he's just picked him up on the road. That's who Will Scarlet is. I thought Robin Hood was the son of a nobleman. No. Well, that's not really according to many of the earlier ballads. I think that's been picked up a bit later. So I think he wasn't actually the son of a nobleman. But that has been added sort of later. But certainly shall tweet out a few articles about the full, whole history of Robin Hood, because who he actually was is just a little bit complicated. Because nobody really knows. Nobody really knows for sure, and they don't reckon he was one person, like I say. So yeah. Well, that was all the stories that I had recorded. But I have found this prologue of The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle. And the adventure that gained him his right-hand man, the famous Little John. So maybe I shall read that out. Although, excuse me for a minute, I do need to have a drink of water. Yeah. I'm not used to talking this much by myself, I have to say. What do you think? Don't think it'll take that long to read out. Oh, hey. Thank you very much, Guide to Culture. Thank you very much for hosting. It's a shame we've got a bit of a shorter stream today, just because Lynx is sadly unable to be here. But I was just about to read one last story, now you must excuse. This one will be live, just due to really a couple of changes of plan today. So this is the prologue to The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle. In merry England, in the time of old, when good King Henry II ruled the land, there lived within the green glades of Sherwood Forest, near Nottingham Town, a famous outlaw whose name was Robin Hood. No archer ever lived that could speed a grey goose shaft with such skill and cunning as his. Nor were there ever such yeomen as the 70 merry men that roamed with him through the greenwood shades. Right merrily they dwelled within the depths of Sherwood Forest, suffering neither care nor want, but passing the time in merry games of archery or bouts of cudgel play, living upon the king's venison, washed down with the draughts of ale of October brewing. Not only Robin himself, but all the band were outlaws, and dwelled apart from other men. Yet they were beloved by the country people round about, for no one ever came to jolly Robin for help in time of need, and went away again with an empty fist. And now I will tell how it came about that Robin Hood fell afoul of the law. When Robin was a youth of 18, stout of sinew and bold of heart, the Sheriff of Nottingham proclaimed a shooting match, and offered a prize of a butt of ale to whomsoever should shoot the best shaft in Nottinghamshire. Now, quoth Robin, I will go too, for fain would I draw a string for the bright eyes of my lass, and a butt of good October brewing. So up he got, and he took his good stout yew bow, and a score or more of broad cloth-yard arrows, and started off from Locksley town through Sherwood Forest to Nottingham. It was at the dawn of day, in the merry May-time, when hedgerows are green and flowers bedeck the meadows. Daisies, pied, and yellow cuckoo, buds and fair primroses, all along the briery hedges. When apple buds blossom and sweet birds sing, the lark at the dawn of day, the throstle-cock and cuckoo, when lads and lasses look upon each other with sweet thoughts, when busy housewives spread their linen to bleach upon the bright green grass. Sweet was the greenwood as he walked along its paths, and bright the green and rustling leaves, amid which the little birds sang, with might and main. And blithely Robin whistled as he trudged, thinking of Maid Marian and her bright eyes, for at such times a youth's thoughts are wont to turn pleasantly upon the lass that he loves best. As thus he walked along with a brisk step and a merry whistle, he came suddenly upon some foresters, seated beneath a great oak tree. 15 there were in all, making themselves merry with feasting and drinking as they sat round a huge pasty, to which each man helped himself, thrusting his hands into the pie, and washing down that which they ate with great horns of ale, which they drew all foaming from a barrel that stood nigh. Each man was clad in Lincoln green, and a fine show they made, seated upon the sward beneath that fair spreading tree. Then one of them, with his mouth full, called out to Robin, "Hullo! Where goest thou, lad, with thy 1-penny bow and thy farthing shafts?" Robin grew angry, for no stripling likes to be taunted with his green years. "Now," quoth he, "my bow and mine arrows are as good as thine, and moreover I go to the shooting match at Nottingham town, which same has been proclaimed by our good Sheriff of Nottinghamshire. There I will shoot with other stout yeomen, for a prize has been offered of a fine butt of ale." Then the one who held a horn in his hand said, "Ho, listen to the lad. Why, boy, thy mother's milk is yet scarce dry upon thy lips, and yet thou prattest of standing up with good stout men at Nottingham butts. Thou who art scarce able to draw one string of a 2-stone bow. I'll hold you the best of 20 marks." Quoth bold Robin, "that I hit the clout at 60 rods, by the good help of our Lady fair." At this all laughed aloud, and one said, "Well boasted, thou fair infant, well boasted, and well thou knowest that no target is nigh to make good to thy wager." And another cried, "He will be taking ale with his milk next." At this Robin grew right mad. "Hark ye," said he, "yonder at the glade's end I see a herd of deer, even more than 60 rods distant. I'll hold you 20 marks, that, by the leave of Our Lady, I can cause the best heart among them to die." "Now done," cried he who had spoken first, "and here are 20 marks. I wager that thou causest no beast to die, with or without the aid of Our Lady." Then Robin took his good yew bow in his hand, and, placing the tip at his instep, he strung it right deftly. Then he nocked a broad cloth-yard arrow, and, raising the bow, drew the grey goose feather to his ear. The next moment the bowstring rang, and the arrow sped down the glade as a sparrow-hawk skims in the northern wind. High leaped the noblest heart of all the herd, only to fall dead, reddening the green path with his heart's blood. "Ha!" cried Robin, "how likest thou that shot, good fellow? I wot the wager were mine, and it were 300 pounds. Then all the foresters were filled with rage, and he who had spoken the first, had lost the wager, was more angry than all. "Nay," cried he, "the wager is none of thine, and get thee gone straightway, or, by all the saints of heaven, I'll baste thy sides until thou wilt ne'er be able to walk again." "Knowest thou not," said another, "that thou hast killed the king's deer, and by the laws of our gracious lord and sovereign, King Harry, thine ears should be shaven close to thy head?" "Catch him!" cried a third. "Nay," said a fourth, "let him e'en go, because of his tender years." Never a word said Robin Hood, but he looked at the foresters with a grim face, then, turning on his heel, strode away from them, down the forest glade. But his heart was bitterly angry, for his blood was hot, and youthful, and prone to boil. Now, well would it have been for him who had first spoken, had he left Robin Hood alone, but his anger was hot, both because the youth had gotten the better of him, and because of the deep draughts of ale that he had been quaffing. So, of a sudden, without any warning, he sprang to his feet, and seized upon his bow, and fitted it to a shaft. "Ay," cried he, "and I'll hurry thee anon," and he sent the arrow whistling after Robin. It was well for Robin Hood that the same forester's head was spinning with ale, or else he would never have taken another step. As it was, the arrow whistled within 3 inches of his head. Then he turned around and quickly drew his own bow, and sent an arrow back in return. "Ye said I was no archer," cried he aloud, "but say so now again." The shaft flew straight. The archer fell forward with a cry, and lay upon his face. upon the ground. His arrows rattling about him, from out of his quiver, the grey goose shaft wet with his heart's blood. Then, before the others could gather their wits about them, Robin Hood was gone into the depths of the greenwood. Some started after him, but not with much heart, for each feared to suffer the death of his fellow. So presently they all came and lifted the dead man up, and bore him away into Nottingham town. Meanwhile Robin Hood ran through the greenwood. Gone was all the joy and brightness from everything, for his heart was sick within him, and it was borne in upon his soul that he had slain a man. "Alas," cried he, "thou hast found me an archer that will make thy wife to ring. I would that thou hadst ne'er said one word to me, or that I had never passed thy way, or e'en that my right forefinger had been stricken off ere that this had happened. In haste I smote, but grieve I saw at leisure." And then, even in his trouble, he remembered the old saw, that what is done, and the egg cracked cannot be cured. And so he came to dwell in the greenwood that was to be his home for many a year to come, never again to see the happy days with the lads and lasses of sweet Locksley town, for he was outlawed, not only because he had killed a man, but because he had poached the king's deer. And 200 pounds were set upon his head, as a reward for whoever would bring him to the court of the king. Now the Sheriff of Nottingham swore that he himself would bring this knave Robin Hood to justice, and for 2 reasons. First, because he wanted the 200 pounds, and next, because the forester Robin Hood had killed was kin to him. But Robin Hood lay hidden in Sherwood Forest for 1 year, and in that time he gathered around him many others like himself, cast out from other folk, for this cause and for that. Someone had shot deer in hungry winter time, when they could get no other food, and had been seen in the act by foresters, but had escaped, thus saving their ears. Some had been turned out of their inheritance, that their farms might be added to the king's lands in Sherwood Forest. Some had been despoiled by a great baron, or a rich abbot, or a powerful esquire. All, for one cause or another, had come to Sherwood, to escape wrong and oppression. So in all that year 50 or more good stout yeomen gathered around Robin Hood, and chose him to be their leader and chief. Then they vowed that even as they themselves had been despoiled, they would despoil their oppressors, whether baron, abbot, knight, or squire, and from each they would take that which had been wrung from the poor by unjust taxes or land rents or wrongful fines. But to the poor they would give a helping hand in need and trouble, and would return to them that which had been unjustly taken from them. Besides this, they swore never to harm a child, nor to wrong a woman, be she maid, wife, or widow. So that, after a while, when the people began to find that no harm was meant to them, but that money or food came in time of want to many a poor family, they came to praise Robin and his merry men, and to tell many tales of him and his doings in Sherwood Forest, for they felt him to be one of themselves. Up rose Robin Hood one merry morn, when all the birds were singing blithely among the leaves, and up rose all his merry men, each fellow washing his head and hands in the cold brown brook that leaped laughing from stone to stone. Then said Robin, "For 14 days we have seen no sport, so now I will go abroad to seek adventures forthwith. But tarry ye, my men, here in the greenwood. Only see that ye mind well my call. 3 blasts upon the bugle horn I will blow in my hour of need. Then come quickly, for I shall want your aid." So saying, he strode away through the leafy forest glades, until he had come to the verge of Sherwood. There he wandered for a long time, through highway and byway, through dingley dell and forest skirts. Now he met a fair buxom lass in a shady lane, and each gave the other a merry word, and passed their way. Now he saw a fair lady upon an ambling pad, to whom he doffed his cap, and who bowed sedately in return to the fair youth. Now he saw a fat monk on a pannier-laden ass. Now a gallant knight, with a spear and shield and armour that flashed brightly in the sunlight. Now a page clad in crimson, and now a stout burgher from good Nottingham town, pacing along with serious footsteps. All these sights he saw, but adventure he found none. At last he took a road by the forest skirts, a by-path that dipped toward a broad, pebbly stream, spanned by a narrow bridge made of log of wood. As he drew nigh to this bridge, he saw a tall stranger coming from the other side. Thereupon Robin quickened his pace, as did the stranger likewise, each thinking to cross first. "Now stand thou back," quoth Robin, "and let the better man cross first." "Nay," answered the stranger, "then stand back shine own self. For the better man, I wot, am I." "That will we presently see," quoth Robin, "and meanwhile stand thou where thou art, or else, by the bright brow of Saint Elfrida, I will show thee right good Nottingham play with a cloth-yard shaft betwixt thy ribs." "Now," quoth the stranger, "I will tan thy hide till it be as many colours as a beggar's cloak, if thou darest so much as to touch a string of that same bow that thou holdest in thy hands." "Thou pratest like an ass," said Robin, "for I could send this shaft clean through thy proud heart before a curtal friar could say grace over a roast goose at Michaelmas tide." "And thou pratest like a coward," answered the stranger, "for thou standest here with a good yew bow to shoot at my heart, while I have naught in my hand but a plain black-thorn staff, wherewith to meet thee." "Now," quoth Robin, "by the faith of my heart, never have I had a coward's name in all my life before. I will lay my trusty bow and even my arrows, and if thou darest abide by my coming, I will go and cut a cudgel to test thy manhood withal." "Ay, marry, that I will abide thy coming, and joyously too," quoth the stranger. whereupon he leaned sturdily upon his staff to await Robin. Then Robin Hood stepped quickly to the other side, and cut a good staff of ground oak, straight, without new, and 6 feet in length, and came back trimming away the tender stems from it, while the stranger waited for him, leaning upon his staff, and whistling as he gazed round about. Robin observed him furtively as he trimmed his staff, measuring him from top to toe from out the corner of his eye, and thought that he had never seen a lustier or stouter man. Tall was Robin, but taller was the stranger by a head and a neck, for he was 7 feet in height. Broad was Robin across the shoulders, but broader was the stranger by twice the breadth of the palm, while he measured at least an ell around the waist. Nevertheless, said Robin to himself, I will baste thy hide right merrily, my good fellow. Then aloud, Lo, here is my good staff, lusty and tough. Now, wait my coming, an thou darest, and meet me